Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me once again for another thought for the day. The day being Wednesday, the 1st of July, a new month. Now, when I say thank you for joining me, I do mean that, friends. I know a lot of you have been tuning in night after night after night. You've been doing so consistently, religiously almost, no pun intended. And I thank you for doing that, and I thank you for the positive feedback and the encouragement that you've been giving me as well. I'm also aware that some of you may not be doing that just as often as others. And again, it's perfectly understandable if some of us are getting a wee bit screen weary. But the thought that hopefully keeps us all going is that this is still a temporary arrangement, and it will be wonderful when we get back to normal, get back into the church building, and we'll have to reassess how we do things. But until that happens, this is one of the ways in which we're doing things. And as I said, it's a substitute, but it's not an ideal replacement for the personal fellowship that we once took for granted, and hopefully will never take for granted ever again. So thank you for joining me today, and I'd like to bring a thought about the Camino, the walk that I did in Spain. Now, I hope you don't sit there and think, oh no, here he goes again, yet another anecdote, another story or illustration from the walk that I did. But I think this is appropriate. We can apply this to ourselves in everyday life. So just take it as an illustration. I might ramble a wee bit in my thoughts as I reminisce, but please forgive me for doing that. But I want to talk about some of the churches that I was able to visit along the way. One of the joys was that the churches in Spain just shows you how different the culture is to the one we enjoy here. But in Spain, the churches, whether they're in the middle of nowhere or in towns, villages, or even in big cities, they're open all day, and anybody's free to go in and have a look around or just rest themselves. Or you can sit there for personal reflection and prayer as well. So, and some of them are wonderful spaces, they're wonderful buildings, all different ages. Most of them seem to be very, very old and solidly built. And some of them are very plain and ordinary. Others have lots of decoration. But I have to admit that all those are wonderful reasons for going in and looking at the building. But my reason for going in was usually because I was too hot outside, slogging along and getting lost quite regularly. And it was wonderful just to see a church and go into it and sit in the cool. No air conditioning, but the thick stone walls and the smallish windows, they kept the Spanish heat out, and it was lovely just to get refreshed in that physical sense by sitting in the shade and sitting somewhere nice and cool. So that's what I enjoyed doing. And of course, well, before going any further, I want to do something a wee bit different tonight. I've got a short video clip inside one of these churches. This was a clip that was taken off a young American girl who just found herself in the church and started to sing a little bit. And the acoustics were wonderful, and the song is wonderful. And well, it'll give you a flavour, it'll give you an idea of the inside of these churches that I'm trying to describe. Of the acoustics, of the decor, of the architecture and so forth. And then I'll come back and speak to you a wee bit more about what I really want to talk to you about this evening. Okay, so I'll come back shortly, just after this clip. It's only about 55 seconds long, I believe, so it'll not take too long. Enjoy. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I hope the quality of the sound in the picture was sufficient to give you at least some idea of what it's like inside the churches that I was trying to describe. But what I really want to tell you about was one particular church that I was sitting in. I don't quite remember where it was, which town or village it was in, but I remember it was a Saturday. It was baking hot outside. I was very tired, so I was glad that this church was open, and in I went, and I was really, really pleased to see it was cool and refreshing inside. So I was sitting there in the peace and quiet, minding my own business, glad of it being cool, when my peace was suddenly disturbed by a small army of ladies who came into the church. As I said, it was Saturday, and this was the squad that came in from the village to prepare the church for the services the next day on the Sunday. And they all come in. They didn't mind me sitting there. It wasn't on my own. There was a few others. So we just sat on and let them get on with their business. So it was all very well organised. Each lady seemed to have an idea of exactly what her job was. And in no time at all, as I said, there was a dozen or more of them. So it wasn't too long before the place was ready for the service the next day. Now, just as they were gathering up the mops and the buckets and the dusters and so forth, I heard them say that they had forgotten El Señor. Now, I'm sure even if you don't know anything much about Spanish at all, you'll know or you'll have heard that the Spanish for a man is Señor. It literally means a gentleman. Well, when Spanish talk about El Señor, the senior, the gentleman, they're actually referring to the Lord Jesus Christ. So my ears pricked up and I heard them talking about this Jesus that they had forgotten, and I wondered what they meant. It soon became apparent because they went to a cupboard at the back of the church, they unlocked it, and they took out Jesus on his crucifix. And what the custom was, well, it was quite obvious that they didn't want their precious Jesus out in the church when people like me were able to wander in and out at will during the week. So they kept him locked away in a cupboard. And then when it was time for Sunday, they would wheel him out of his cupboard and give him his proper place at the front of the church. And then they were able to leave, knowing that the place was ready for worship the next day. Now, friends, I have often thought about that as an illustration, and we find it perhaps quite amusing, keeping Jesus in a cupboard all week and then just bringing him out for Sundays. But we've got to be very careful because we can be guilty of that in our own way. We keep Jesus locked away somewhere all week. We don't see him. We don't think about him. We don't notice him. But when it comes Sunday, we've got to take him out and give him his proper place. Then we'll remember him. Then we'll think about him because it's Sunday and we've got to go to church. My friends, we've got to be very careful of that because we can't keep Jesus in a compartment or in a department of our lives. He's always with us. In fact, he ends Matthew's Gospel by saying just that. He says, "Lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." So he's always with us, friends. We can't put him in a cupboard. We can't put him in a department. We can't keep him out of sight and out of mind and just wheel him out on a Sunday or wheel him out when we're talking about Christianity or when we're talking to another Christian. We've got to remember that Jesus is with us all the time. He's also said elsewhere in Hebrews and in the Old Testament as well, that he will never leave us nor forsake us. So he's telling us quite clearly that he's with us all the time. So do you know what that means, friends? It means that if you're a believer, if you're a follower of Christ, wherever you go, he goes. Whatever you do, he sees you do. Whatever you're looking at, he is looking at as well. So we've got to remember to live our lives in the sure and certain knowledge that Jesus is with us every step of the way. He's not someone that just joins us at the weekends or when it's convenient. He is with us all the time. And friends, we should be glad that he is. We shouldn't want to keep him in the dark and bring him out when suits ourselves. That's just wrong. That doesn't work. That's not what happens. That's not the way it is. So please, as you go through life, just remember that Jesus walks beside you. And that should be a reminder to keep us on the straight and the narrow. So forgive me for rambling perhaps a little bit this evening, but that's our thought for the day. Jesus is our constant companion. Thank you for listening. Please remember to keep praying, keep washing your hands, keep looking up, keep safe, and keep Jesus beside you. Okay? I'll speak to you again soon. Until then, bye for now.